Hello everybody, Brad Johnson here, and I'm excited to bring forward another Adronis video. And in this video, Adronis is going to be talking about merging your levels. We are here. At this time, we bid you greetings, and thank you very much for the opportunity of this interaction today. I am Adronis of Sirius, sending love, appreciation, and gratitude to all who are tuning in to this broadcast through your internet collective consciousness. So we have been asked, relating to speaking, about the topic of merging your levels. Now, it is important for many of you to understand that there is indeed a criteria that is firstly needed before you can start moving into the merging of your own levels. And what that entails is being able to build rapport with the higher self. Now, many of you may start to walk upon this planet believing that the higher self is just someone else out there, some other particular connection, some other particular version of yourself that's again beyond you. And that's not the case. You and your higher self are already one being. So what you are learning to do here is building a rapport canvas as it relates to the higher self. Well, Adronis, what do you mean? Well, just as Brad was able to create and will Lexi into being, you are learning how to will your higher self into being. So, what this means is that you have a canvas of rapport, which means that you can see your higher self as an older gentleman or a younger gentleman, or your higher self as an older woman or a younger woman, or your higher self as an animal, or your higher self as a plant, or your higher self as a luminous ball of white light. It doesn't matter. It's the rapport that you put forward relating to what you feel represents your higher self. Well, what is the higher self? What does that mean? Well, when you look into the aspect of a higher self, does that mean that that higher self has absolutely no conflict? Yes, it does. Does that mean that that higher self is not drenched in trauma? Yes, it does. Does that mean that that higher self is not emotionally imbalanced? Yes, it does. It is a polished, purified, refined version of you that you are creating here. That's the rapport canvas, because that is the element of the higher self. So you start putting together this rapport canvas, a canvas that you have a strong relationship with. So you may, for example, give it the appearance of an animal. And now you start to put in characteristics, attributes, personality, feelings, thoughts. What is my higher self like? Well, the higher self is just so wise. You put that into the canvas. The higher self is just so incredibly intelligent. You put that into the canvas. The higher self is so compassionate. You put that into the canvas. The higher self is so loving and so sweet and so gentle. You put those elements into the canvas. Through meditation. And through meditation, you start building the personality complex that represents the higher self, and the higher self will reciprocate all of those thought forms and feelings that you place within the personality complex of this resemblance of the higher self. So you're creating your higher self. That's what you're doing. Because again, nobody knows your higher self better than you. When you say those two words, higher self, that's what comes up. Intelligent, wise, maybe a little bit funny, sweet, compassionate, loving, happy, joyful, excited. Yes, all of those qualities. It has an absence of anything conflicting, of anything traumatic, of anything overly dramatic. of overanalysis. It doesn't have any of those qualities at all. It's pure love. It's pure compassion. It's pure infinite intelligence. It's spirit. Wow, my goodness. This is you building the very canvas that is going to be your higher self, that's going to keep working with you every single day, daily. You'll be able to call in your higher self just as you envision the higher self to be. That white wolf, that black bear, that old woman, that young man, that floating orb of luminous white light, whatever it may be, a spiraling galaxy, that could be the higher self. It's up to you, to you, to you, to you. Not up to us, not up to anybody else. To you. You build that rapport canvas. So, Adronis, how do I do that? You go into meditation. You go into a space that is quiet, that is peaceful, that is receptive to you reflecting inwards. And maybe you have a piece of paper handy. Maybe you want to sketch out the higher self. Maybe you want to give it a likeness, as if you were to go into the mirror and see yourself shrouded with pure white light with a big smile on your face and your eyes are glowing and your hair is radiating light. Maybe that's how you see your higher self. Then go ahead. No one's going to stop you from doing that. Work with the power that is inside yourself. So now that you have done that, you've created a canvas. You've given the higher self the personality complex of all of those attributes, those characteristics. That personality altogether. Your thought forms, your feelings. It has imbued within the canvas of rapport that is the higher self. So, now that you have created that, the higher self will pop in instantly. Instantly. As soon as you call it in, oh, higher self. Maybe you want to give the higher self a name. Maybe you want to call the higher self Bob. Maybe you want to call the higher self Barbara. Maybe you want to call the higher self the higher self. It doesn't matter. Give it a name if you want. It's your creation. You don't play in a sandbox and build a sandcastle and have to go tugging on other people's sleeves and saying, hey, what should I name that sandcastle that I just created? You can if you want, but it takes away the enjoyment of the creation that represents that sandcastle. So, you've created the higher self out of the sand representing your mind. Out of the thoughts that you have cultivated together into a matrix. Out of the feelings that therefore imbue into that matrix. It's your creation. It's your resemblance of the higher self. And the higher self in totality will embody itself into that canvas, because that is the essence of what the higher self represents. And so now instantly, that higher self pops into your life and you start talking to it. You start asking questions to the higher self. Higher self, what's my purpose on this planet? Oh, let me tell you about that. And therefore you get a response. Higher self, what should I be doing more and more on with my life? Oh, well, let me tell you about that. And you get a response. Higher self, what about partners? Higher self, what about business? Higher self, what about career, etc., etc.? Oh, well, let me tell you about that. And you get responses. Because through the same capacity that it took you to create the higher self from within you too shall get the response. Just like how Brad was able to create Lexi. The exact same way. This is you manifesting a spirit being consciousness through a canvas rapport, representing that of the higher self. So now that you have done that, within the days, the weeks, the months, or even possibly the years that go by, depending upon the person, you now understand a lot more about what the higher self is. You feel the higher self. You understand its personality because you willed it into being. You understand its thought structure because you willed it into being. You understand its nature because you willed it into being. And day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, it has continued to help you in so many ways you can't even begin to describe. Just like Lexi was able to assist Brad in opening up his heart a lot more, to which he thought he could never do again. And it happened through his own creation. And this can happen with you. Through your own creation, everything starts to come back into order. Now, with those qualities, those characteristics, those attributes relating to the higher self, as you have given the thought forms, the feelings relating to your higher self having infinite intelligence and being without any forms of conflicting flaws, you will need to understand through that model, the higher self is always right. All right? So when you go into your lower self and say, oh, but that can't be true because of this, or that can't be true because of that, well, your higher self is going to respond accordingly to its personality that it was designed with. Working with love, working with compassion, working with empathy, working with joy, working with excitedness, but infinite intelligence, but wisdom. And it's going to work with those characteristics. It's going to show you, I know you think that, but that's not the way. You're not seeing this. You cannot see the forest from the trees. You cannot see the valley while inside the valley. You have created me to be at the summit. And I'm at the summit. And I'm looking at everything here, and I'm telling you that what you're doing right now is not the way. And that's your higher self speaking. And its resemblance to the actual higher self is identical. And so what you're doing is you're seeing your ego reducing itself, minimalizing itself, because you're talking to the higher self every single day. And now that you're talking to the higher self every single day, and days and weeks and months or even years pass, and that you have such a rapport with your higher self, you're now ready for another step. But before you take that other step, there's a step 2 here. Step 2 is leaving your ego at the door when you're talking to your higher self. Giving the higher self your undivided attention. And giving the higher self your fullest of cooperation and commitment. There's 3 things within step number 2. Step number 1, create the canvas rapport of your higher self, or the rapport canvas of your higher self. Step number 2, follow those 3 attributes. Ego at the door, undivided attention, full cooperation and full commitment. And as you do that, throughout the days, weeks, months, and possibly years, you go on to step 3. Step 3 is the convergence of the higher self into you. The merging of all levels to where you are looking at a lower self and a higher self, and you scratch out the higher and you scratch out the lower, and all you're left with is the self. Capitals S-E-L-F. Self. That's what you're left with. There's no more levels. Just like you're not playing dimensional or density games here. There's no levels. When we hold up an onion to you, we're showing you the entirety of the onion. We're not showing you its layers. We're showing you here's the wholeness of the onion. So, now that you are understanding that, you understand that you are the self, you can merge the higher self with you into every cell of your body, into every molecule, into every atom, into every subatomic particle, into every fiber of energy that represents yourself. It can be merged, amalgamated into yourself. How is this possible? Because you got to know your higher self so well that you understand the philosophy. Life is simple. It's all about the science of simplicity. SOS. Not save our souls. but the science of simplicity. This is what the higher self is here to teach you. That through simplicity, everything comes to you. Not complexity. Complexity in its own nature brings much more of a stagnancy, brings much more lack to you, because you're overthinking, you're overanalyzing, you're over-scrutinizing, you're over-evaluating. You overly palpate everything, and you then question it, and then you palpate some more, and then you question that. And then you evaluate a lot more, and then you question that, and then you analyze more, and then you question that. You have never reached a state of fulfillment by being overly complicated. And that is the side effect of living life by the intellect. Living it by the ego. It's never satisfied. Even your own scientific method is never satisfied with results. Oh, we found this, but now we got to dig a lot more. Oh, then we found this, but then we got to dig a lot more. Oh, then we found this, and we got to dig a little bit more. And that's not going to end ever. It's going to go on forever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever. Like a hamster that has never been able to get off that wheel. Keeps spinning and spinning and running and running and running. Never stops. But when you come into the science of simplicity, everything is available to you. You become a god. You become a master. You talk to Spirit and saying, Spirit, this is what I want in my life. Make it happen. Okay, done. Come and dance with me. I'll lead you. I'll take you wherever you need to be so that you can get to that opportunity, so you can get that manifestation. That's it. You leave it to Spirit. And now everything comes to you. You didn't have to do anything. And the science of simplicity works every single time. And you feel fulfilled by living a science of simplicity life. An SOS. Not a distress, but a happiness. A liberation. Freeness. That's what simplicity does. That's the nature of the simple. And that is how you converge. That's how you amalgamate, is when you surrender and you let things in. You surrender, you feel absolutely wonderful about yourself, and wonderful things come together. Whereas you're so afraid to surrender because you're just holding up big gigantic shields, hoping that nobody gobbles you up, hoping that nobody harms you. And that's living a complicated life. Because you overcomplicate everything. Spirit constantly tells you, drop the shields. Trust in love. Work with love on a daily basis. Give yourself positive reinforcement. Oh, no, I can't. And the shield goes up. And you're fighting with yourself. Because you're so confused, you're so lost, you're so overly complicated with yourself. You can never discover peace within. You're constantly looking outside for it. And that's what the intellect does. And the intellect is the worker bee. It's not the queen. The intellect belongs down here. Whereas many of you have put it up here. It doesn't belong there. It's not where it fits. It's you trying to take a puzzle piece and jamming it and smashing it into the puzzle to think it belongs there. It doesn't. Bring it down. Bottom rung of the ladder. Doesn't belong there. Follow the science of simplicity. Let Spirit do the work. Let your higher self guide you. Follow the science of simplicity. Now you can merge with your levels, where you're simply the self. There is no lower self anymore. There is no higher self anymore. And there's no levels in between anymore. Because this is what you get so worked up about in your metaphysical, spiritual, and New Age communities. Oh, but my higher self says, or what about my higher self, or can I connect with my higher self, blah, 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 blah. Rather than looking at the higher self, When you come into that level of the science of simplicity, the higher self bonds with you. It merges, it amalgamates, it converges within every cell of your body. And now you are the higher self. You are the lower self. And now you are all other levels in between. You're just the self. But that comes through the rapport of you developing a relationship with the canvas that is the higher self, your creation. That is the living representation of the actual higher self. Because in actuality, the higher self is formless. It does not have form. It's truly consciousness. So what you're doing is you're building it a vessel. You're giving it a canvas. You can even create a different canvas over time if you feel the higher self serves in a better form. You can do that. It's always changeable. It's always malleable. Everything changes. Please remember that. So, follow the science of simplicity. As you continue to dialogue and work together and connect together with your higher self on a daily basis. Daily. Not just once in a while. Daily you work with the higher self. Daily you remember you keep your ego at the door. You give the higher self your undivided attention. You give the higher self your fullest cooperation and commitment. And the higher self will work with you and help you to reach greater states of transformation unlike anything that you can even imagine. And these are the steps that will lead you eventually into the third step, where the higher self will tell you, it's time. I can now merge into you. We can now become truly one, because you understand the rapport that I am with you. And so now the higher self, that canvas that you have created, and the embodiment of the higher self merges itself into every cell of your being. And now you're the living higher self. Now you're the living self. And you can cross out the higher, the middle, the lower, the physical. You're just the self. This is what your ancient masters have done. Your ancient yogis, your ancient monks, your ancient masters, gurus, ascetics. They have done this. And they have attempted to pass this on to others. But because so many of them spoke enigmatically, often through riddles, many of you just didn't get it. What is he trying to say here? Why is he speaking so enigmatically? Why is he speaking through riddles? Just give me a clear answer. All right, we'll give you a clear answer. Start living a simple life. Start listening to true intelligence, and that intelligence is love. It's compassion. It's joy. It's happiness. It's support. It's encouragement. Because that has the highest intelligence of all. Because all of those traits that we have just mentioned do not have a single crumb of ego contained within them. Not a single crumb of intellect contained within them. The only difference is that those energies, when they come through you, intellect bows its knee and listens to them. Because that is the natural order. When the intellect is back down here, and you're working with love and compassion and joy, and you're getting inspired, and you say, I'm going to create this, you instantly go. And now your intellect helps you out because it is a slave to love. That's its nature. Intellect is your slave. It's your servant, whatever you want to call it. Love is the master. Love is the queen bee. Intellect are the worker bees, serving the hive, serving their queen. And they would never, ever, within 1,000,000 years, try to take the queen's place. That has been created through falsified programming. That your intellect needs to be up here. No, doesn't work. You'll destroy yourself. You're not built to do that. Intellect gets back down here. Intellect's energy is not built to be up here with love, with happiness, with joy. That's not its purpose. Get back down to where you belong. Down here. At worker bee level. Now the worker bees start going around, they start pollinating the flowers, they bring all the honey back into the hive. That's the intellect. That's what the intellect is supposed to do. Be a servant to the simple, to the love, to the compassion, because the love is giving you the blueprints. The intellect says, absolutely, master, let's go ahead and do this. And now you start building. Yes, now you have understood the nature of what the intellect is meant to be, of its position in things. Get back down to the bottom rung of the ladder, intellect, because that's where you belong. True intelligence is the inspiration with happiness, with love, with compassion, with joy, with encouragement, with support, with mercy, with gracefulness, with everything else that represents a divinity. That's true intelligence. And this physical vessel in the material world, on the outside to where the intellect can play, is therefore following the orders of the infinite intelligence that is, overall, love and happiness. So, that is how you create a vergence. The merging together of all levels comes when you understand the science of simplicity. And now it becomes all part of you. In every cell, in every molecule, in every atom, every subatomic particle, it is there. So, that is the way of merging together with your levels. Create the canvas, that rapport with the higher self. Let yourself leave the ego at the door. Give it your undivided attention. Give it your full cooperation and commitment. And over time, your higher self will say, you are now ready to merge with me. And you are merging your levels together, and you become the self. Thank you very much for checking out my channel. Below you'll see my links to social media, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can also go to healingcodecards.com, pick up your own Healing Code Cards body deck. And of course, check out my website at newearthteachings.com. Thank you once again, and I'll see you in the next video.